How are you doing on this Thursday? I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Good. It is great to see so many faces. Thank you. It's nice for me to feel like I'm interacting with people. All right, we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to jump in and get started. Again, as questions come up, just feel free to throw them in the chat. And we'll just go down the list that I have. Welcome to our September town hall. One of the first things I just wanted to share with all of the team, especially as we're moving into our next legislative session and our budget requests, is some guidance that we as the Executive Director's Office have given to all of the division directors and want that to trickle down through the departments. But as we've been meeting with agency leaders throughout the state, and hearing their challenges and their opportunities and how we engage with them, one of the things that we really challenged our divisions to look at is our rules and reducing administrative burden wherever we can. And that's not to say that we shouldn't continue to fulfill our statutory obligations, but are there things in our rules that have become maybe more cumbersome or bureaucratic than it needs to be? For those of you who have been around for a while, you probably know the name Chris Cox. She was, I think, the executive director over at GOMB when it was called that. I had a conversation with her yesterday, and we were talking about something on policy, and she used a phrase that I wrote down because I loved it. And she said, when you're talking about a policy or process, what is more important, the bureaucracy or the customer? And I scribbled that down because I want to make sure that I'm keeping that at the forefront of my mind as we're creating policy for our department even, but also as we're interacting with customers. And so one of the challenges that we've issued, like I said, is just to look at what we're doing and see if there's opportunities to reduce the administrative burden that we place on other agencies so that we can be more responsive to our customers. So we'll provide some more feedback as we start to go down that path, but I just wanted to make you all aware that that's a challenge we've issued to all of the division directors as they begin to look at their rules. It also falls in line with the executive order that Governor Cox issued. I want to say it was in 2021, Executive Order 12. If Mike Rashinsky's on the call, he can probably tell me if that's the wrong number or not. But Governor Cox issued an executive order specifically related to agencies reviewing their administrative rules. And one of the things that he challenged us as agencies to do was to reduce any unnecessary regulations on the citizens of Utah, but just going through our rules and updating them and making sure that they still they still make sense for the business processes and the services that we're providing today. So we're going to take him up on that challenge and go through our rules. It's a very extensive binder that Melissa has printed out for me of the rules that we have for our department. And we welcome any feedback that each of you have, since the boots on the ground people who are, living these rules and implementing these rules on a day-to-day basis, you might have some fantastic insight that we should consider. So please, if you do, send those up to your managers, your division directors, or even EDO if you'd like us to look at that. The next thing I just want to cover real briefly, last town hall, I shared some information that Speaker Wilson had said at a recent public meeting, a legislative audit, regarding some thoughts he had on, he was talking about ISS in particular, but I would say our department as a whole is an agency that provides services to other agencies. And I shared the feedback that Speaker Wilson had given and the challenge that I took upon from him, which was that we should always be measuring and monitoring how our customers feel about us and our level of customer service. And I had a few people share some feedback with me that there were employees that were concerned that I shared that statement from Speaker Wilson, that it was kind of a hard statement to hear. And so I just want to emphasize to this team that while we're always advocating for the needs of our department, I'm always going to be very open and transparent with all of you as to the feedback that I hear, whether it's good or bad, because I feel like we're only going to be able to meet the expectations of our customers or legislators if we know what they're thinking and feeling. And so I'm happy to address any concerns that you have if feedback comes up, but I'm never going to withhold that information from you. I don't think that's fair to any of our employees to not let you know what our customers think or what legislators think, except good or bad. So I hope that didn't cause too much concern. If you have specific concerns related to what Speaker Wilson said, I'm happy to talk through those with you. But just want to share my philosophy with you, which is I'm always just going to share with you the feedback that I hear so that we're all on the same page and we can all work together to address any concerns that do come up. Okay. The next thing on my list, I'm not seeing anything come through the chat yet, is HB 104. And I have a feeling we'll probably spend a lot of time today talking about that because this one keeps coming up as a big concern for employees, not just in our department, but in agencies across the state. So just as a refresher, HB 104 was Christopherson's bill last year, Representative Christopherson and Senator Vickers, that has the state moving to a performance management system in fiscal year 2024. And what the bill specifically states is, number one, DHRM is to put together some rules for the implementation of performance management systems. Number two, DHRM is coming up with some required training that supervisors in the state will take in order to successfully implement and maintain performance management. And then it tasks each agency with actually developing their agency-specific performance management system. And it has some basic guidelines in there, but the intention was that agencies would have a lot of autonomy to build their performance management systems specific to their agency instead of just dictating a one-size-fits-all approach that every agency was going to implement. So we're right in the process now of starting to develop what that's going to look like for GovOps. We mentioned this in a town hall a while back, but Mary Lee Richens, one of my deputies, she's been tasked with developing a compensation strategy for the department as a whole, looking at making sure that we have consistency across the department and that we're addressing any equity issues as well. So she's continuing to work on that as well. Because HB 104, the system goes into effect in fiscal year 24, that's when agencies have to have their plans ready as well. So I've had a lot of questions from employees that have said, well, if performance management is going into place in fiscal year 24, but we don't have our system yet, how are employees going to be evaluated when it comes to pay in fiscal year 24? So what we are recommending as an agency, and I'm not seeing any pushback on this at all, but that for fiscal year 24, the legislature still implement or issue a COLA for all state employees, and then and put some performance management dollars in addition to the COLA. But the full program really won't be into effect until fiscal year 2025 because fiscal year 24 is when we're rolling that out. And we want to make sure that we're very transparent with all of our employees so you know exactly what to expect in our performance management system. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is starting in Q1 of next year, 2023, we'll start holding some town halls that are specific just to our performance management program to answer questions that you have and to start sharing with employees as we've got that developed, what performance management is going to look like. Sure you have all your questions answered so that as we roll into fiscal year 2024, every employee feels like they understand the program, they understand how it's going to work, and they understand how they're going to be evaluated. And for supervisors and managers, they understand that the training requirements that will come with being able to evaluate employees and participate in that performance management system. So again, we're still building out that performance management plan. We're still building out our compensation strategy as a department. We anticipate that we'll have information that can be available and starting to be shared with employees in that Q1 of 2023, and we'll have those ongoing dedicated town halls to answer questions as we roll it out. But just want to emphasize again that our recommendation to the legislature is that there will be a COLA that's not based on performance that is given to all state employees as we work with agencies and with our own agency to get that rolled out. Mary Lee, since you're spearheading the compensation strategy, anything that you want to add to that I missed?
I would just say there's so much conversation going on about HB 104. There's so many rumors. I have heard so many things about what we are going to do that not true. So I would just ask you, as you hear rumors, just say, huh, that's an interesting question. I'm going to bring that up at the town hall. and make sure that we cover the questions, but don't pass on information as if it's truth. We are going to talk about this as much as you want to talk about in order for you to feel comfortable. Like Jenny said, we're going to do town halls. If we need to do more town halls than what we're doing, like we did back in the first with the transition where we did it every week, we'll do that. But this is your single source of truth. This is where you will always get questions answered for the whole department, and the whole department is going to do this the same way. So I guess I just want to just guard you and have you be careful and have you not get too worked up as you hear rumors, because I'm telling you, nothing's been decided yet. And I'm sorry for being on my phone. I can see all of your beautiful faces on my great big screen, but for some reason I cannot get audio to work on my computer. So there you go.
Thanks, Marilee. John Barron, if you're on the line, I'm not sure if he was able to make it. Do you have any thoughts that you want to add just to HB 104 overall?
First, hello. And I think it's just an amen to DGO, EDO. We're in a tricky spot as DHRM has heavy lifts that we serve, of course, all agencies. I think the expectation is that Jenny, Marilee, and Chris have all the answers, when really DHRM is in the middle of what we call consultative experiences with all agency leadership, where we have a good runway, still I'd say 6 to 8 months to help agency leaders define what they want their pay for performance models to look like. I think the rub right now is our employees want to know now. We luckily were very engaged in building out that legislation, and we bought ourselves some time to define it with leaders. The thing I like about where we're at is we're giving each agency the autonomy to build their own pay for performance model, right? So if you're out to lunch with DPS or DNR employees, and they say that they've heard something about their pay for performance model or their performance management, that very well could be the case. Agencies are progressing at their own rate. Their agency leaders are delivering at their own speed, and the DHRM teams are engaging with all of those agencies at different levels and different factors. So if you hear something from DWS, it might be something that's actually validated by Director Cameron in that space, but Director Reese might have not made that decision over on GovOps. So we're moving. This is a really, to Marilee's point, interesting time where House Bill 104 is getting a lot of noise behind it. And to also validate Marilee's point, the best way is to ask your leadership of your agency. You may not hear the way that Director Reese intends on doing it if you ask Director Ferry over at DNR.
Thanks, John. And that's really one of the things I appreciate about the way that Representative Christopherson went about it is giving a lot of autonomy to agencies, knowing that, you know, what works for public safety might not be what works for Health and Human Services or for GovOps. And so allowing each agency to really build it in a way that makes sense for them. Okay, someone says, are there any pilot agencies prior to 2024? I can only speak for GovOps, and then John, I'll turn some time over to you. We have been piloting only the performance management part of it, in that if you recall, we rolled out, I don't remember when it was last year, but Dan Chase met with all the managers and supervisors via a virtual meeting to provide some training, where we were asking all managers and supervisors to have a monthly informal conversation with employees, and then a quarterly formal and documented conversation about performance. And so we've been working on that as an agency over the last year or so, as we start to figure out what's working and what's not. And we've had some great feedback in the pulse surveys as well from employees about that. And that will help us as we build out a more solid performance management plan. John, are you aware of what other agencies are doing?
Yeah, good question, I believe, Katie. Short answer is there are elements of House Bill 104 that have been tested and developed across many agencies, but delivered as a full kit, I would say that doesn't exist in the way that the bill is intended to. So directly, no, there aren't pilot agencies that have all of this tied together, but there are definitely elements of House Bill 104 that exist amongst many agencies.
Any other questions on that? I was expecting there were going to be just a list of questions on HB 104, but I'm not seeing anything other than that one. Any other questions on that? Performance management, compensation strategy that we can answer for you? Okay, I'm not seeing any yet. If you think of anything, feel free to throw it in the chat. And as I mentioned, we'll have some town halls dedicated just to that topic once we have that built out and are ready to roll it out. One of the things that we've talked about in a prior town hall as well is our plan to have some leadership development or specific manager and supervisor training, and that we'll make sure that that aligns with the requirements of HB 104 and working together very closely with DHRM's team, specifically Dan Chase and his team on helping to build out that program for GovOps so that we're in alignment with HB 104 there as well. Okay. I thought that was going to take a lot more time, so I can move on to the final item that I have on my list, and then we'll get to any other questions. But I just wanted to share with each of you some insight into the budget request that we have submitted. So we submitted our budget request to GOPB last week, and just so everyone's aware of the process, we had each division meet with EDO and share their budget requests, and we talked through those. Those were all compiled and sent to Jay Hennessy, who is our Department of Finance Director, and then we prioritized those and sent them over to GOPB. The next step will be that GOPB will meet with agency leadership of all state agencies to hear their budget proposals. And then they will take all of those and they will prioritize them themselves and decide what's going to be in the governor's budget and what's not, and what the governor's priorities are. I believe last year the governor's budget came out in December. Is that still the time frame, Jake Hennessy? Oh, I called him out. He's probably not on the call. Anyway, I think that was the expectation. Again, this year, as the governor's budget generally comes out around December, and then of course, then it goes to the legislature, and we go through that process again of presenting our budget proposals that got in the governor's budget. So, just to give you all some insight, we don't have as many as last year. Janica, are you on the line by chance? I'm just putting people on the spot. That's okay. If she's not, I thought I would have her talk through some of hers, but if not, I'm happy to. The finance has a couple. The first one that they have submitted is a chart of accounts re-engineering project. Janica could get far more into the weeds than I can, but every agency utilizes the chart of accounts. Each agency is assigned a department code, and then the financial transactions that happen within finance are aligned with that chart of accounts, the way that the coding is set up. In the last legislative session, I do not remember the House bill number. It was also Representative Christopherson, though. He was successful in passing a bill related to fees that are assessed by agencies across the state. And that's different from our rates, our ISF rates. These are fees that are generally assessed to citizens, like if you're going to the state park, you know, the fees, entrance fees and such. And one of the things he was really passionate about was that agencies should be able to tie their expenses to the fees that they're charging to make sure that they are covering their costs and that they're not using it as a revenue stream for other projects, but that cost allocation should be in there and agencies should be able to tie that back in. And part of that is going to be upgrading and updating our financial system to make it easier for agencies to be able to do that cost allocation. It's something that we're interested in as GovOps for doing with our rates as well. We want our rates to be very transparent, the rates that we assess to other agencies. And so we're also very interested in this cost allocation model so we can tie our expenses back to our revenues that we're charging in the form of rates. So that budget request will help us upgrade that chart of accounts in order to make that easier for agencies to implement. They also requested some funding for FiNet optimization. We actually ask for this each year since the FiNet upgrade. For those of you who are unaware, we've been working on a FiNet upgrade. I think the go live, Marilee, if I'm not wrong, is next week on this new system. It's a pretty significant upgrade. We moved from an on-prem system to moving it to the cloud, but it was also several versions behind, and so we're moving several years ahead, and it's going to be much more robust and allow agencies to do quite a bit more than we have in the past. But part of that is making sure that ongoing we are now maintaining that system. As new upgrades come out automatically, there is some customization or configuration that needs to be done because of the unique way that Utah handles their finances. And that's the same for every state. Every state is unique in their process, and making sure that we're staying on top of that. In addition, Janica has put together a team that reviews requests for upgrades within the FiNet system and then determines what things that they should implement in the next fiscal year. And so that funding, that ongoing funding, will be utilized to not only do those configurations, but to add enhancements that are being requested either by us or by other agencies. A great example that I can give is one of the agencies needed to be able to use barcode scanning. And instead of going out and finding another vendor to provide that service, that is a service that our financial system can handle. And so looking to implement those add-ons or those extra services with this ongoing funding. And they're also interested in looking for a new position that would communicate and have a lot of interaction with agencies, specifically around FiNet. One of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of agencies need certain systems like the barcode scanning, but other things as well, and they just don't know that our financial system has that capability. And so having somebody who's dedicated to that ongoing engagement with other agencies related to our financial system to help them know what's already available. So that way we're reducing the number of shadow systems or duplicate systems that are out there, and really pushing as much of our financial transactions within the state into our financial system so that we have that one single source of truth when it comes to state finances. Marilee, anything I'm missing there since Janica's not online that you want to add?
Nope, I think that's good. You did a great job.
Okay, the next one is archives, and Ken Williams on the line. I think he's hanging out in Nashville this week, isn't he? At an archives conference. Okay. Ken Williams, for those of you who don't know, he is the division director of the Division of Archives and Records Management. He's also the state archivist, and very recently now the president of the National Archives Association. So he is not in the office this week. He's at an archives conference, but they have one request for some technology upgrades. Archives has been in this really interesting position where for decades, obviously, most of the records that they maintained in an archive status on behalf of the state were paper records, old maps and books and all the, documentation and minutes and all of those things were on paper. And as we've transitioned to a more electronic world where a lot of those communications are now electronic, whether it's email or the public notice website, even notices and minutes are all electronic, their ability to capture and retain records that are required by law to retain, but in an electronic format, has been a struggle for them, as they just didn't have the technology and the infrastructure to be able to maintain records, electronic records. So we're asking for some funding to be able to now serve as the state archives for the state for electronic records, specifically the additional storage that they're going to need for that. DTS has a few. Alan Fuller, are you on the line?
He's at a conference.
Oh, that's right. Silicon Slopes is today and tomorrow. So he's at that conference in Lehigh.
I'm happy to, if you want someone else to talk.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll give you a break for 1 second. So our first request, we are always mindful of security, and our authentication system that employees use to log in and also multi-factor is very old. And so it's time to upgrade that. So that's our first request. Our second request is there's many systems in state government that are legacy. We call them legacy applications, just means old. They need to get to new technology. And so our second request is to build out some platforms so that agencies can then adopt these platforms as they build new systems or replace new systems. I'm just going fast, but the third is Qualtrics. So the governor's office is very interested in making sure there's a customer feedback loop. And so the third request is for paying for Qualtrics it's paid for this year, but then it would be the next 2 years to kind of pilot this to see if we can get a really good feedback loop in state government where we can take customer feedback and then do something with it. And then I'm going to skip number 4 and just go to 5, which is our UGRC GIS. Matt Peters is probably with us, but some funding to enhance their web services that they provide to the citizens in their imagery. So that's a really quick on the DTS requests. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan. I like that legacy sounds better than old. So when my kids tell me how old I am, I'm just going to say I'm a legacy.
All right, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And then risk management. Brian Nelson, are you on the line?
I am.
You want to talk about your 2 requests? Yes.
Certainly, Jenny. Thank you very much. The first request is a $25 million ask appropriation to help capitalize a captive insurance company we've created by statute so that we can help fund the deductible that we now have in place for earthquakes. It used to be we had a $1 million deductible for earthquakes. Since we had the March 18, 2020 earthquake, which cost us about 80 million, our insurers have demanded that we move that to a traditional catastrophic loss deductible. So it's now 5% of the value of damaged properties with a minimum 5 million and maximum 25 million. And we've done the math. And if we have another earthquake like the one we had in 2020, which was relatively small, it's going to cost us the full maximum of 25 million. So that's an ask that we have, and we're making that request so that we can fund any future earthquake events and not have that uncertainty as whether or not we can bear that. The other is a $15 million ask to help fund a captive relative to our excess liability program. Brit Global, which is a Lloyd's of London syndicate, has essentially informed our broker that they're likely not going to renew our coverage. And this coverage is available. We purchased it back in 2006, really to help address the civil rights claims that don't have any tort caps or limits on judgments, and also for any out-of-state type accidents or injuries. And we don't have the benefit of the tort caps when those occur. And so we have to now move to a different structure where we have to self-insure more, and we need to capitalize that and then buy insurance on top of that. But we're going to have a deductible probably about 10 million, whereas in the past it's been 2 million, and the cost of insurance is just going up. So these are 2 asks to help us get these structures in place so that we can effectively insure all of the entities of the risk fund, all the universities, schools, agencies, and charter schools. So anyway, Jenny, thanks for your help with that.
Thank you, Brian. All right, and then we just have 2 more. They're both EDO requests. The first one is for an agency privacy and security director. And since Chris Bramwell's on the line, I'm actually going to have him talk about that one because he's the one who made us aware of this need within our agency. Chris, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So every state agency has responsibilities related to privacy and security. DTS security plays a core function in providing standardized security services, but the agencies are responsible to know their data and ensure that their systems properly define and allocate security and privacy controls. So in the consolidation, Health and Human Services went through this last year of figuring out how to consolidate their agencies and set up a privacy and security organization that is a hybrid model across their new consolidated department. And we hadn't done that yet here in Department of Government Operations. So Phil and I and Bree have met with Jenny and the EDO team and discussed the need to have this role who would lead the effort to ensure that the Department of Government Operations and its agencies or divisions understand its roles and responsibilities for privacy and security, and implement a standardized program that ensures we're doing the duties that we're supposed to.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And then last but not least, Scott Tingley, you want to talk about the Office of Internal Audit?
I'd love to. I always like talking about internal audit. Many of you probably don't. But yes, so the function of any internal audit program, whether it's in the public sector or private sector, is to be a management tool and to help management through giving honest, independent, objective feedback about our governance, risk management, and internal control processes and systems. And this request really came about. There's been a lot of focus within the governor's office currently about risk management and risk assessment within all of the state agencies. And also going along a parallel line, the Office of the Legislative Auditor General has expressed some concern that they spend a lot of their time when they perform audits of state agencies focusing on areas that have traditionally been the role of an internal audit function. And they've expressed concern and some frustration that they're not able to look into bigger statewide issues that are affecting the state because they're spending so much time focusing on governance and risk management and internal controls within state agencies when they initiate their audits of state agencies. And so both of these focuses kind of came to a head, and Director Reese's vision was that as a state agency that provides services, products and services to other state agencies, it's just kind of a natural fit that me and my team would actually offer internal audit services to other state agencies, and with specifically the focus being on smaller state agencies that may not have the resources to fund their own internal audit program, or even the larger agencies that may not have adequate funding for their own internal audit programs. So I think it's a fantastic proposal, and we've already received some interest from some state agencies in using these services, and we're really excited to get this program up and running. We're roughly asking for just shy of $600,000, and that would fund 4 FTEs to start the program and get it kicked off. And then we can go from there as far as determining what the interest and what the actual utilization of this team would be. So in a nutshell.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Okay, so those are the budget requests that we have sent over. Just wanted to make sure that you all had insight into what we'll be advocating for over the next month or so with the governor's office, and then moving into the legislative session. If you have questions, we're happy to answer those. That was everything that I had on my list. I do want to address a question that came up through the intranet, and then if you have any questions about anything, feel free to throw them in the chat. One of the questions that has come through relates to comp time and the comp time deadlines. So it was brought to our attention when we consolidated last year, though we were officially government ops in July of 2021, our chart of accounts didn't move to 150 until July of 2022. And when that code change happened, so we went from department 100, 110, and 140, I think is what they were. Now we're just one department code of 150. When that change happened, it automatically defaulted comp time deadlines. I think it's the end of the year. And within GovOps, we had teams, not even just divisions that had different deadlines, but, I'm using the wrong term, but what's the right term, Marilee? It's not a deadline, but like when you're gonna use it or lose it.
comp expiration.
Your expiration date, sorry. Not only was it different among divisions, but even within a division, there are different teams that had different expiration dates depending on the needs of the team. So we've been working with the division directors to determine a new expiration date that would be applicable to the department. I don't have that yet because we're still having those conversations because we want to make sure we understand the unique challenges that exist across our department as a whole. We anticipate we'll have that finalized by the end of next month or so. Is that right, Marilee? And then we'll start having those conversations on a broader level with all employees.
I would expect that we would send out some communication to all employees regarding expiration dates and all things comp by the first or second week in October. So
Okay.
we're
So we've been working closely with Cass Hart. She's our HR field director. I think she's on a cruise right now, so she's not here. But a much deserved cruise, I should say, by the way. We've kept her busy in this consolidation. Anyway, we've been working closely with her to understand the different current expiration dates that existed and understanding the needs behind that. And then again with division directors. So we'll make sure we get that communicated here within the next few weeks. Okay, what other questions can we answer for you?
Jenny, while we're waiting for questions to come in, can I say something?
Please do.
I just want to thank everybody for your participation in these Pulse surveys. The Pulse surveys, Steve Cuthbert in DHRM is kind of spearheading that process. We got, I think, Steve, wasn't it like close to 500 responses on this last one, the very first day? And I just want to express my thanks. This data is so, so important. And in fact, in the next town hall, I think that we're provided that there's not other pressing things, but I think we're going to take some time and show you what has come out of these surveys. We're going to be showing you what patterns that we're seeing and what the discussions around these surveys are. We want you to have full visibility into what we're seeing so that you can see it too. But that'll be next month. But I just really, really wanted to thank you. I know nobody loves taking surveys, but you guys have just shown up, and this is really, really important. And I just really wanted to thank you.
I have Steve Cuthbert as agenda topic number 1 in the October town hall. I think that's important information to make sure that we share, because we want to let employees know that we do take that feedback seriously and that we're actually doing something with it. So we're excited to have Steve present next month. What changes should we expect from the Utah ID upgrade? That's going to be somebody from DTS to answer that question. Dan, do you know anything about that one, or is somebody else from DTS on the line that can answer?
That was kind of our first governor's office request, was replacing that whole authentication and Utah ID. I don't think we're just doing the architecture right now. So I don't think there's a lot we can share at this point because we're still kind of coming up with the project plan. I'm trying to think if Dave Fletcher is on the line. He'd be able to give more info. It's hard for me to scan through and.
I am here, Dan.
Okay.
And really, one of the things that we need to do is most of the IAM, identity and access management vendors, are moving their services to the cloud. Our service is still on-prem, and it's a combination of different vendors that have been patched together. So we still have a directory service that is from Novell from back over almost 20 years ago that we're using to connect to a couple of other vendor services to create an identity and access management solution. So the future solution will be more unified, and it will be cloud-based, and it will enable us to hopefully move into the future with a more secure identity architecture and one that integrates better with all of our digital services and enables us to leverage some new features that provide better support for customer journeys and things like that going forward.
Thank you, Dave. I'm seeing a couple of comments about Tuesday's fall event. I first of all want to express my appreciation for everyone that came out. It was so wonderful to see so many of you. It's nice to have people here in the office and in person. And so thank you for all those who were able to join us. And really all the credit for the planning and the coordination goes out to others. I know, and Melissa, you can tell me if I'm missing anyone, but Melissa Brown really spearheaded this, but with the help of Jennifer Hardy, Amy Christensen, Devin Wild, Michelle Brown, Lisa Brown, Kate Layton, Tracy Graft, Stephanie Van Rosendahl, Ingrid Norton, and Greg Uber. They're really the ones who pulled it off and made this successful. I hope I'm not missing anyone, Melissa, but tell me if I am.
Nope, you got them all. Well, we had a few others chime in, but those were the people on the ground. So
a big thanks to that group who this was other duties as assigned, but really made that event successful. It was a lot of fun. So Steve, this is probably for you as well, but will all application integrations with OIDC continue to work without a migration plan? Dave Fletcher, did you hear that question?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, Steve was asking, will all application integrations with OIDC continue to work without a migration plan?
No, there will be some upgrades required, I believe.
Okay, thanks. Steve Cuthbert just threw the link into the survey. So if you haven't taken it, please do. There are 2 question surveys. It should take you less than 60 seconds. We'd love it if we had more participation. Mary Lee is giving a shout out to DTS. They fixed her computer so she can get off of her phone now and use her computer. I don't see any other questions. So we will plan on ending early. Like I said, next month, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that survey data. We'll have Steve Cuthbert present and provide some information on what we're doing with that. I really appreciate your participation in these town halls. If there are specific topics that you want to make sure that we cover, questions that you have, don't be afraid to send me an email or to send it through the employee intranet if you would prefer that to be anonymous. And we'll chat again next month. Thank you all.